episode 6 of the Lifestyle Entrepreneur Podcast with Marisa Murgatroyd, where she talks about how to build a brand that influences and inspires millions. Welcome to the Lifestylepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Kris Gilbertson, and I'm an author, speaker, and an expert on how to help you launch your own successful podcast. And the reason I designed this show is to help you create a business that allows you to live the lifestyle of your dreams. Tune in every Friday as I'll be interviewing top experts and lifestylepreneurs from all over the world who will share with you actionable training and advice to give you the insider track on taking your business to the next level. I'm going to work really hard for you to pull out the most incredible nuggets of training from all of these experts. And the best part, it's all free just for you. And be sure to join us at www.lifestyleacademy.com and subscribe to receive your free 3-part mini podcast course to help you launch your own podcast and on your way to generating free leads, traffic, and sales on autopilot and creating the platform for your lifestyle business. Plus, I'll also be sending you the cliff notes from the best of the best trainings on the podcast, delivered right to your inbox to make it easy for you to implement these strategies and move forward in your business. Now, let's get started. I'm so excited for our guest today. Her name is Marisa Murgatroyd, and she is the founder of Live Your Message. And what she does is she shows entrepreneurs who have a big message for the world how to build a leading brand and a lucrative web presence. And Marisa stands at only 4'11" and 1/4, and she's known as the shortest woman in marketing, but you have to tell you, that doesn't stop her. She is making huge strides with all of her clients and how she helps entrepreneurs with her no-nonsense approach, and she's earned her reputation as a results getter for leading edge clients such as Don Crother, Alexis Neely, Michelle Shubnell, Morgana Ray, even Mark Katz. Evan Mark Katz, and it goes on and on and on. And today, Marisa's purpose and passion lies in helping emerging entrepreneurs launch themselves online through her signature training programs such as Message to Money, Hidden Story Power, Superhero Summits, and there's so many other brands that she works with. So I'm so excited to bring you to our guest today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for that energetic introduction.
Well, fantastic. I'm so excited to have you. This is going to be an absolute blast because I know as entrepreneurs, this is one of the biggest questions and holds most people back from launching and getting started. It's all the questions of their messaging and their brand. So I'd love for you to share how you got started as an expert in your field.
Absolutely. So I kind of made a horizontal shift. I was working for about 8 years in the nonprofit space. So I was helping nonprofits and governmental agencies and really large organizations like the Getty Museum and the state of California and UCLA translate their message into web projects and print projects and documentary films. And what happened is I'm so passionate about getting results and really helping people get their message out there. But when you work for these really big organizations, there's a lot of bureaucracy, right?
Yes.
They kind of move at a snail's pace. And here I was fascinated with cutting edge technologies, with, what's going on in the internet at the time. And I really wasn't able to be as effective as I wanted to be. And the other thing is I was building everybody else's business and not really having the flexibility and the freedom in my own life to kind of live the lifestyle that I wanted, to start to see profits on the back end as well. And so what I thought is, maybe I can apply the skill set somewhere else. And at the time, I really didn't know what I could do. I knew I could tell great stories. I could make things look really good. I could make things sound really good. I'd been a filmmaker on sets and, art directing these big projects. But I didn't really think that was practical, believe it or not.
Really?
So, yeah, you never know what you don't know, what you know. And what I knew ended up being super valuable in a context outside of the one that I was using it in. So what I did is I started on the pathway of learning from the people who had made the biggest names for themselves and built the biggest empires in the online business space. I started learning from the giants like Brendan Burchard and Eben Pagan. I started getting coaching and investing in myself. And once I realized that there's a whole industry and a whole kind of market outside of the one that I was working on, all of a sudden the light bulbs started going off and I realized, holy smokes, there's massive, massive potential here that I didn't even realize. I just thought, you graduate from college and you get a job. I didn't realize you can create anything that you want to create.
Yeah.
And once I realized that I could really make a living doing what I love and being completely myself, and that people would value the skills that I had, I went about positioning my business and really understanding how to create a brand that was going to get results and stand out in the marketplace. Because I really believe that it's not about your business, it's not about what you know, it's not about what you sell, it's about the emotions and the experience that you can create in other people that inspire them to not just say yes to working with you, but inspire them to implement and do the hard work of putting this stuff in place in their lives. And so no business model is going to be successful if it's not able to create that set of associations in the minds and in the hearts of the people that it reaches. So for me, that was a process of soul searching, but also doing a lot of my own processes that I use with my clients on myself and figuring out, well, how do I stand out in that market? How can I really make a splash? And the funny thing is, when it comes to branding and messaging, is once you start to look the part and sound the part, people just think that you're the real deal, because the vast majority of entrepreneurs don't take the time to actually make themselves look good or invest in the way that they're sounding and the way that they're appearing in the public. And as soon as I put that in place, people are like, wow, I've got to listen to this woman. And that was it.
I love that story, and I love your awakening, because I think a lot of us take for granted our background and what we were doing and how we can actually transition. So what was the key turning point though? How did you transition? Because you had all that great experience, but how did you figure out and kind of coach yourself into becoming the expert in the online space that you are now?
Sure. Well, it's kind of silly, but I just jumped in the car and spent about 3 months driving up from Los Angeles to Vancouver and camping along the coast and just thinking about what I actually wanted. And then once I realized that I was never going to be comfortable or happy fulfilling a role, that if I was ever going to be satisfied, I had to give myself permission to actually do what I love and to do it fully, and to translate that into a business that was uniquely my own, because my personality, it just don't do well with a boss and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
I agree. I get it.
Yeah, I had to actually have the time and space to separate from what I thought I should be doing, what I was taught to do, to understanding what I really wanted to do.
Right.
And to allow my authentic voice to come out. And that took a little bit of unlearning and, undoing. Because what I've realized is that when people know who you are, when they feel you, they actually kind of fall in love with you and they want to follow you and buy from you. So I had to have that process in place to step into who I was and to step away from that role that I've been playing professionally my entire career.
Right. Well, would you mind sharing, what is it that you, Marisa, what did you want? I mean, what was it that helped you really define that? Because I think a lot of people they really want to be out there and they want to, they've got messages, but they aren't quite sure how to craft that. And I'm curious on how you actually really fine-tuned it, because you've got a lot of amazing products now. You didn't start with all those to begin with.
No, absolutely. So I think for the first thing, in terms of fine-tuning it, what I've realized is that I love to get results. I love to see the results and the effects of my actions. And one of the things that just drives me absolutely batty is a waste of human potential. I remember sitting in 5th grade and the teacher would just be wasting all the students' time. And I'd go up to the teacher afterwards and I'd be like, girlfriend, you've got 30 students for an hour and you're wasting our time. What's wrong with this picture? If you calculate that hour times 5 days a week times 150 days a year, that's a massive, massive waste. And what I realized too in my own life is that I wasted a decade of my life fulfilling roles that weren't mine to fill. And the thing is sometimes it happens through tragedy for people to realize what they want. Yeah. Sometimes it's just the golden handcuffs that are so hard to break out of because they're kind of good and supporting you and secure and all of that.
Right.
And so my entire business of Live Your Message is trying to empower and inspire people to realize that what they've got and who they are is enough, and that nobody needs permission to get out there. And now when we have the tools like the internet and all the tools to run a business online, and then the ability to kind of reach millions of people around the world in just a matter of seconds, it's just such an unbelievable way to get human potential out finally. It doesn't matter where you were born or who you are or how old you are. You've got a market as long as you can get in touch with what it is that makes you super unique. Yeah. So I think the way that I dialed into it is realizing what the frustration in myself was and that frustration, I mean, almost anybody, any frustration that you've got, it's likely to be shared by thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And for me, it was the feeling that I was wasting my time filling a role that wasn't mine to fill, that I had so much more to give, that I was bigger than what I was doing. And I wanted to get out there in a massive way and not do it kind of half-assed, not doing it in the sense of, here's my dream, here's my mission, here's my purpose, and then just have a dream and a mission and a purpose because that's enough, but to take massive action, to actually go after it as if I could be the number one authority in what I did. Yep. And I really do think that if you're going to create your own thing, you've got to go after it with the intention that this is my thing for the next decade, and to kind of go out and own it, to position myself and do it right. And so once I tapped into that core kind of why and purpose behind what I did, it became easy to see, well, here are the different channels and the products and the things that I need to talk about to inspire other people who might be like me to take these steps in their own lives, not do it in the sense of pipe dream or fantasy, but to do it in this real results-oriented, strategic, conscious way that was crafting, reverse engineering their success step by step.
I love it. You resonate so well with everything that I've gone through as well too, because I think a lot of people have done that. They've either gotten into a job that they're so comfortable with, and they know they have this burning desire inside of them, but they don't know how to really get out there and how to do it. So let's reverse engineer a little bit right now, because when you launched, you talk about results all the time, which I absolutely love, because at the end of the day, we have to measure that to be able to be successful and to get our message out there even farther. So what is the strategy the number one strategy you would suggest for entrepreneurs that are just getting started? They have their message and they're ready to launch. What would be the path that you would suggest that they take?
Absolutely. So there's always this conflict between content and positioning. So everybody thinks that their success and what makes them unique is about what they know, their unique content, their signature system, all of that. And there is a certain extent that people have got to be interested in what you talk about, and in order for you to be a success and for them to buy from you. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who talk about the same stuff, right? I mean, if you search any topic in Google, chances are you'll get thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of results.
There's nothing new. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what makes you different and unique? Why should people listen to your content and not everybody else's?
Yep.
And I've always gotten into this argument, what comes first, content or brand? Content or brand? And I realized that you've got to get out there and make, start selling your product, start working with people to realize if you've got something. But I think that those two things have to be crafted together, because what makes you really, really unique, it's not just what you know, but it's who you are and what you represent to people.
Right.
Because when information alone also doesn't move people to action. There are tons of studies that people are motivated into action. They make purchasing decisions because of emotions. So simply by telling somebody, here's the facts of what you need to do and why it's important and what it's going to allow you to do in your business, it kind of goes like this. You hear it, maybe it resonates, but then you write it down and you stuff it in a drawer and you forget about it.
Yep.
But when you start to tell stories that actually create an emotional resonance in the person that you're speaking to, and by stories, I don't just mean my personal story of why I do what I do, even though I tell that all the time. But I mean stories about everything. It's what makes content memorable. It makes content actionable. So when you tell stories, the brain actually gets activated in all the regions as if it were living that experience themselves. So information just hits a couple of different points in the brain, the kind of, logical centers of the brain. But stories activate all of these experiential centers of the brain as well, and provide much more of a complete experience that is inspiring for people to move forward. And so when I talk about brand and when I talk about messaging and when I talk about positioning, it's not just let me come up with a logo or, absolutely that's important. And I must have named, dozens and dozens of businesses at this time. And you want that name, like live your message that resonates with your audience.
Right.
But it's like, who can you be? What's that consistent experience that you can create across everything that you do? So I think about online as all of these different doorways or portals, right?
I love
And
it.
a lot of times people just roll out one portal, they roll out another portal, they roll out another portal, and it's kind of a mishmash of stuff. Each one is sending a different message. Sometimes they're sending mixed messages. Sometimes they're sending signals that work against what that business is about or doesn't align with that person, so it's not believable. Because if someone doesn't believe the messenger, they're not going to believe the message. And so I always think of it like Charlie Chaplin. He opens that door and he walks through and it's like, bam, falls down because there's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
People, like, they set up a opt-in and you opt in and you get like one email and you never hear from them again.
Yep.
And so I think when you take the time to really position yourself strategically and understand, this is who I want to be for the world, this is who I need to be to support my message, this is who's going to inspire people to get up and take action, and then you consciously push that out into every single marketing channel, then regardless of where they see you, they're inspired by you, they feel something for you. When your audience starts to have a real experience of who you are, like emotions and images and words attached to that, that's when you're said to have a brand. It's not by stamping that logo and that business name. It's by people having associations around who you are and what you do. And the only way to build those associations is by reinforcing that message and that experience through all of these different channels and doorways and portals. So it kind of works together and builds up to a tipping point of people saying, oh my gosh, this person,
I have to work with them. Yeah, exact. That me too. I love that. And that story, it's so powerful. I mean, it's so true. Nobody cares about facts. Facts tell, stories sell. So I want you to talk more about that. How can you use storytelling? I mean, let's break it down a little bit more, because I think a lot of people understand that. I think it's what story they should be telling and how to craft their unique story. So let's talk about that.
Sure, absolutely. So one quick point. So this guy named Rolf Jensen was a futurist back in 1990. So hopefully he's still a futurist today. But he said that we're moving away from an information age into a dream society, meaning that people no longer buy products because of the features and benefits of that product and what they do. They buy products because of the emotions attached to it. So what Rolf did is he identified a half dozen emotional markets, basically. And what I help people do is figure out what emotional market is actually resonant with what you're selling and what your audience wants around your product, service, or transformation. So for example, if you look at this half dozen emotional markets, like the very first one is fun and adventure, And
that's your video super.
Yeah, it's my video. The whole brand is based around fun and adventure.
Love it.
So when I looked at all the telesummits and stuff out there, they were all kind of boring. They were all about business success principles and this and that. And I'm like, cry me a river. It's like I've seen the whole thing over and over again. But nobody's doing a summit in a way that it's so irresistibly fun to take part of, not just as a participant, but as a presenter, that everyone's going to want to take part of it. So I tapped into that emotional market of fun and adventure when we crafted that brand. But it's different from the emotional market that I'm tapping into in my Live Your Message brand. So really, the next emotional market is the self-identity market, right? So this is who I am in the world, right?
Yep.
So this is who I'm going to be through all of my different, activities and purchasing decisions and all of that.
Yep.
So Live Your Message is based on that market, which is I'm going to help people create a business that's the full expression of who they are. Do you see how powerful that is? Because everybody wants to create something that they identify with as a person.
And at the core, really, everything embodies that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's also the story that I was telling in terms of being in a role that didn't feel like me.
Yep.
So people resonate with that because that's one of the 6 core emotional markets. So when you're telling a story in business, it's got to be relevant to one of these markets because these tap into the deepest needs that we have as humans, and we all have the same needs and desires.
Exactly. And that's what's so... this is just brilliant, and I definitely want to make sure we put that in the show notes for the rest of the levels, because a lot of people forget that, and they go just the generic... upper level. And that's why it's not drilling down. And I went through that when I first launched my business. It was like, wait a second, not everybody is who I'm looking for. It's that one target market that I can really resonate that like you said with your story. Like I resonate with you perfectly because I was in the same position. So I think that's brilliant. So,
and that's conscious. I had to kind of figure out what are the stories that are going to support my business and inspire people to work with me. And I can quickly give you the other 4 markets.
Yeah, let's go for it.
I've got them here in the transcripts and all of that.
Yeah.
So the next market is togetherness, friendship, and love. Right? So for example, if you look at a lot of the high-end masterminds that people are paying $50,000, $100,000 to be a part of, it's because they're creating community, right?
Yes, I can think
and
of
people
a ton
want
right now.
to tap into that community. And the next market is providing and receiving care, which is healing and happiness and balance. So people want to give care and receive care. So that's a little bit different than creating community and togetherness.
Right.
That's actually taps into a lot of the sort of healing things. And there are a lot of people who are in that market. And if you look at kind of health coaches, if you look at yoga experts, if you look at even life coaches, a lot of them will tap into those particular markets, right?
Yeah.
And after that, we've got the peace of mind and permanence market. So this tends to be, brands that go after nostalgia, like it's always been done this way. If you look at Jack Daniel's, 1886, we've had the same recipe, and it reminds you of sitting on your porch looking at the rolling hills of Tennessee. You know what I mean? In a world that's moving so fast, some people want to have stories that remind them of the things that have always been there.
Right.
So that market, if you're really established and if you've been getting results for 20 or 30 years, that's a great market to play on. And it's also a great market if your audience is a little bit older or more conservative, not necessarily politically, but in terms of their values.
Right.
And the final market is the beliefs and convictions market. You see this in religion, you see this in politics. You say, I believe, and I'm working with a client right now on a business called Get America Moving. So basically, he believes that anyone can exercise.
Yep.
And that the number one cause of premature death is not being obese, it's being inactive. And so we're really tapping into a belief and conviction market there because he already talks like that. So I wrapped his brand around that. So it's
brilliant.
natural to the way he naturally speaks, right? And we created the entire brand message and story and name of the business around that particular market.
Oh, this is absolutely brilliant, Marisa. I mean, for what you just uncovered for everyone listening, you can not pigeonhole, but you can pick your category and already start to understand what the keyword, like the terminology, the language that comes from that. So that's brilliant. So what about people that have, like you're in different markets? How do you suggest with your overall brand you incorporate that?
Absolutely. Well, I think that some brands go, whole hog into one particular emotional market, but I usually identify the primary, the secondary, the tertiary market. So for example, with Live Your Message, my primary market is self-identity, right? And then I also get into the fun and adventure and the togetherness and the beliefs and convictions, you know? So I probably have nothing to do with permanence and peace of mind, but there are certain messages that you can have multiple levels of messages. If you look at somebody like Brendan Burchard, who talks about, did I live, did I love, did I matter? That's did I live, right? He's really talking about self-identity. Did I love? He's talking about togetherness, friendship, and love. Did I matter? He's talking about this beliefs or convictions as well, and also a little bit of self-identity. So there are multiple layers of markets. You're going to understand what's the primary one that you want to focus on, but then realize that you can play off of different markets too, on different products and different positions and different stories. But there are some markets that don't work as well together as other ones, but you can have a very multi-layered brand story that reaches people on a lot of different levels as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. So let's talk about how you use the storytelling in the business then, and how to craft that first maybe signature story, if you want to call it that.
Sure, absolutely. So when I think about if it's a product that I want to sell or just a point that I want to make, if anybody who's on my mailing list, almost every email that I send has a story in it, right? Because as soon as I started using stories, even in the subject line tells a story, right? And if you think about every marketing message or every promise as a story, as soon as I started to do that, my open rates went up, my click-through rates went up. People really went kind of crazy for that, right?
Yeah.
So, stories everywhere. I use stories when I talk. I use stories when I train in my actual products itself. I'll drive a point home or a training home by telling a story because that makes it real. It also allows people to visualize it. And when someone visualizes it, they're more capable of taking action on it than if they
Right.
just have an intellectual concept that's in their head, especially for adults and adult learning.
Right. Well, it's a real
So-
connection. I mean, it's like so many neurons are firing with that and the experiential component of it. So, yeah.
Right. So I basically think about, okay, here's the product, and here is what it does for people. Now, what are the stories that I can tell that will help people connect emotionally with that product and with that transformation? Because moving someone to take action takes some extraordinary inspiration. And if you look at all the greatest people in their field, whether it's Janet Atwood talking about the passion test, whether it's like Oprah, whether it is the Brennan Burchards, it goes beyond what they teach, right? They make you feel something, and that's why they're so loved. That's why they're at that 1% of, presenters and trainers and just figures who are just loved and desired, across the board. So when you really tap into that, it's pretty amazing. So what I do is a mixture of the emotional markets, the 6 emotional markets that I just told you, which is fun and adventure, togetherness, friendship and love, self-identity, beliefs and convictions, to provide and receive care, and permanence and peace of mind, with what I call the 6 desire markets. So that tends to be things like to make money, to achieve fame, to have, to feel better, to have spiritual growth and evolution, to those are the markets of what people actually want at the kind of more surface level, the kind of obvious level. And the vast majority of marketing stays at that obvious level. I'm going to help you reach 6 figures in your business, right? And it doesn't go into, all right, I'm actually going to help you create a business that you love, that's an expression of who you are, right?
Right.
So that business is still making 6 figures. But there's a deeper level of emotion that's what's motivating people to move forward to actually create that.
Exactly.
So I'm mixing the 2 levels when I think about how to apply these stories in my business, of understanding the actual desire that people have with what that deeper desire is, that story behind the desire.
Right. The real the real cause to get them to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the first story you told in your business?
Kind of funny, I've come a long way from that very first story, but I'll be honest and tell you what that first story was. So I was at an event with Bo Eason, and it was a personal story power event where everybody got to go on stage and tell their story. So at the time, I told the only story that I could think of, which was basically about me and my dad, and the day that I graduated from college, my dad handed me this letter. It was like 12-point Times New Roman. And he said, Marisa, congratulations. Here's like $40,000. You can either invest it in a down payment on a house or graduate school education, and I'm never giving you anything else again, and I hope you'll go work for a real well-respected institution. It was like, all right, my job is done. I got my daughter through college. Now she's on path for that career to just unfold. And what that did is I just crashed and burned, and I was like, wow. I just spent 20 years of my life buying into the dream hook, line, and sinker that if I just made great grades, got into the Ivy League, did super well in college, that my career would unfold for me. And then when I realized and got that letter, I realized that's not even what I want. And it's not going to happen like that. And I don't want to work for a well-respected institution. That sounds like death to me, right? And so I told that story of how from that moment, I basically spent 10 years spinning and trying different things and having successes, but not really realizing that I could go and do and be what I wanted to.
Right.
And have, a quantum leap greater levels of success than if I was just sitting in a well-respected institution. So that was the story that I told. And so many people identified with that because it's hard to understand. I think, we're all raised in certain ways by parents who have got great intentions, by a society that wants us to be successful. But sometimes it's hard to differentiate between, for me at least, what my parents want, what society wants for me, what I was educated to believe, and what I actually want and what's actually possible for myself, right?
And it takes those experiences and having the patience with yourself to work through that, because you have evolved so much with what you've done from that first story. And that's what I want to talk about next, is how has that evolved for you and how has storytelling changed your business?
Right, absolutely. Well, what I realized, the response to that one story, and it wasn't even a very good story and it wasn't very polished, was so tremendous, where I got emails and YouTube notifications and blog post notifications of people just saying, wow, I feel like I understand you at a whole different level. What you
Right.
do and what you stand for all of a sudden makes sense for me. People like hugging me at events and saying, I watched your video and it inspired me, or like, I'm so mad at your dad for you, or that reminds me of my dad. And I got so many feedback like that where all of a sudden people were like invested in me personally because they knew who I was, they knew where I came from, they knew why I was doing what I was doing.
Right.
And I thought, holy smokes, if this is the response I get from telling one story kind of poorly and clumsily on stage, then what would happen if I told more stories, right? So what I started to do is, like I said, really every single thing that I want to do, even if it's a blog post, what's the story that I need to tell in that email to inspire someone to click through and read that blog post?
Exactly.
And, an example of that is I wrote a blog post on the top 3 things your website needs to do because, I build a lot of websites and brands for people.
Right.
And, I could have written a blog post that says, click here to see the top 3 things that your website needs to do. And I might have gotten like 10 or 15% of people to click through. But instead, I wrote a story. The subject line was, what gelato has to do with your website or something, right?
Yep.
And I told a story of going into Whole Foods and meeting a guy who was giving samples of his Genuto's gelato and how he was so passionate about this and all of this. And then I said, this is experience of meeting someone for the first time and being so just inspired by their energy and drawn in is what your website needs to do. So click here to see the takeaways. And that click-through rate was like 40 or 50%.
That's outstanding.
Because, and it's the same blog posts, right? But if I just give that factual information, people don't care. But if someone visualizes themselves in that scene of meeting someone, then it brings that blog post alive because my principles were actually, you wanted your website to do what you would do of meeting someone in person.
Exactly.
So the story allowed them to see that. And then all of a sudden that concept too sunk in for them, not just in terms of being interested enough to go read the blog post, but then to be able to apply that principle and remember that principle on their own website.
Right. Right. This is so powerful on so many levels. And I forget the gentleman that created the 6 processes of where we're going, but I think people...
Jensen.
Perfect. Well, it's so powerful though, because we're coming back to that connection-based society where this technology is amazing. We can reach people all over the world, but it's those stories that really, where we can, like right now, just from meeting and what we're talking about here, people feel like they're friends with us just from the conversations they've heard on YouTube and the blog posts. So bringing that to life is so powerful with those stories. So is there any other advice that you have on how to actually really bring a story to life for entrepreneurs within their brands?
Well, there's a lot of different tips and tricks on how to structure a story, for example, and how to bring a story to life by using words that are evocative and visual and evoke the 5 senses and things like that. So, for example, like the 2 biggest story structures that I know is the flash forward and the flash back. So, a flash forward basically says, all right, the day I had this tragic accident, right?
Right.
Changed everything. And then you flash forward to the ripple effect that incident had in your life. The flashback might be, yes, I'm making, $10 million today and I just rolled up into this event in my Rolls Royce, but it wasn't always that way. 7 years ago, I was in a bathtub and
I love it.
Down, parked by the river, whatever it happens to be. You've heard those stories before.
Yeah.
So to structure them in a way that people see the transformation, and to also end them in a way that has an invitation, a call to an adventure, a call to action for your audience. So there's a lot of different elements of telling stories in a way that it's not just like, get out the family photo album.
Right.
But that inspires and motivates people to action.
I love that call to adventure. I think that's brilliant. It brings people in to want to engage with your brand even more and just take that next step. Right. So I think that's just fantastic. So I want you to share with us more about how, with your mindset and how you made that transition of what were some of the key things you did to really step out there and own your space? Because I think that's a big problem for a lot of people. I know it was for me and a lot of experts I meet is actually believing they're the expert and just stepping out there.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think I always was confident in what I knew.
Right.
But what I wasn't confident is in who I was. And I think as a woman, for one, I never wanted to be seen for my appearance. I never wanted to be like I was also not that comfortable. I'm kind of shy, stepping in front of the camera and being visible for everybody.
Yeah.
And, for me, what I had to realize, though, is that people identifying and connecting with me was that first step.
Yeah.
So I had to really, and it feels like boot camp something. I'm training my voice. I'm, looking at the style statement that I'm making. I'm looking at all the different indicators when people meet me that they can actually sense who I really am.
Right.
And want to know what I've got to offer.
Yeah.
So that's everything from the way that I look, to the energy that I'm putting across, to the tone and the tenor of my voice, to my body language, to what I call your XYZ statement. Some people call your elevator pitch. But what are all those signals of mastering the impression and the experience that you're creating, right?
Yep.
So I always call that the 3-second rule, that if someone's not interested in 3 seconds, they're out of there. And you can have an amazing message, but if you're like, hi,
right.
I'm Marisa, or like,
right, too much, like, yeah.
Yeah. People are just like, bam, they're out of there.
Yes.
And I had this experience of that, which is actually a story as well, that when I was, right out of college in my 20s, I went to work for a portrait photographer, and I was actually, photography was one of my first loves and my first kind of professions. And in the contract, it said, you've got to wear makeup. And I thought, makeup? And I'd never worn makeup in my life. And I was kind of opposed to all of it at the time. And I said, dude, like, I don't know how to wear makeup. I don't even know what to do with it. So, and I said, why do I even have to? Doesn't this seem a little bit superficial? And he told me, Marisa, we are in the business of representing people's identities. And if you don't look like something that they want to become, or they want to be represented as, they're not going to trust you. And I was just floored. I was like, holy shit. This appearance stuff has a lot more to do with, a Valley girl on Rodeo Drive shopping at Gucci.
Yes, it does, though.
This kind of knee-jerk reaction that this appearance thing was superficial. And then I realized that it was actually incredibly profound. And it was the gateway into people knowing who I was. And it was also the gateway into me stepping up and being confident. And to be like, you know what? When I put on some clothes that make me feel good, I'm able to step up and be that much more confident in my message. When I take myself seriously enough to do 20 minutes of vocal exercises before I go on to any interview, so I feel like my voice is carrying the energy that it needs to carry, I feel a lot more inspired to talk passionately.
Right.
So when I do these things to really step up that level of energy and step up that level of presence, then I feel like I can carry my message, that I am a big enough kind of vehicle for my message. When I build that website, when I build that brand that looks so amazing, I'm excited to hand someone my business card because I know they're going to check me out and fall in love with what they see, and to know that I'm the real deal.
Right. And you owe it to everyone listening, owes it to their audience for them to really step up and shine, because we all have amazing gifts to share. Right. But just having those few little packages and just getting started, though, it doesn't have to be perfect, but having the platform that you get and move forward. So what are some of the future trends you see with for marketers today online? Because it's so incredible what we have in front of us today and what we can do with our businesses.
I know. I love this question because I really think it's all about asking what's next. I heard that the product launch cycle, basically, the iterations of products has gone from 2 years to 6 months. So the top technologies and the top products are literally innovating every 6 months. If you look at Apple, for example, to stay on top of things. So I really think that question of asking what's next in my business, how do I stay on top of things, how do I not just regurgitate the same product or success over and over again, move people to that next level of where they want to go. So some of the trends that I really see, the first one that we've talked about a lot today is story over content. Who you are over what you know. You know, emotion over logic. And that also translates into community and experience, creating community, creating live experiences, creating unique experiences over just giving people information or training. You don't say, here's your home study course, go do it, because everybody falls off the wagon and nobody finishes those courses. And the people who finish them, it's just put into their brain and they don't implement. So what I do see is moving into more of that experiential, participatory, interactive age. You can do that both through technology, But also, I think when you fuse the online and the offline, it's even more powerful.
So how are you doing that in your business right now? Because you have a lot of engaging experiential
Right.
brands.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that I did in the month of May is I was launching the Video Superhero Summit. So I thought about how can I get my Live Your Message audience interested in a new brand? So what I did is I decided to do a 30-day video challenge where I just put myself on camera and said, you know what? I realized the next level of growth for me is to get super ninja at video. And video is the way that people can actually feel you and see you, connect with you.
Yep.
You know, people are now prioritizing information on video from all other kinds. So I'm just going to do this because I'm not that comfortable and you want to join me. And what happened with one video blog post is I had over 300 people join a Facebook group saying, I want to go through the video challenge with you.
Oh, that's amazing.
And massive engagement. This post had almost 400 comments and, you know, crazy amounts of likes and shares and Facebooks and everything. And then 40 people actually finished the challenge. They actually
that's fantastic.
did a meal a day for 30 days. And I decided to reward it, and I gave away a couple iPads and a bunch of scholarships to my programs. But it was kind of extraordinary because I realized by actually creating a challenge and a community around this thing, and I did it for free. I didn't even ask for an opt-in. I had no idea it was going to spark what it did.
Right.
And I realized, oh my gosh, people want to learn, but they want to do it in a setting where they can reveal and share of themselves, right? And people were like crazy on this Facebook group. We had just, I think, multiple hundreds of posts every single day. And people are forming relationships. And I said, anybody who finished, I said I would give them a special gift. And I didn't know what it was when I started it, but I decided to give them all live tickets to my Message to Money live events. And now so many of the people who finished the event are going to come because now they want to meet each other. They're invested not just in me because they saw me over 30 days on video at moments when I was exhausted at like 2 a.m, just being like, I promise I can do this challenge. So here I am doing it. But they're invested in each other. And so now there's momentum in my business because there's a community that there wasn't before.
Right. And one of the biggest things that we haven't talked a ton about, but with those stories, it brings people together. And when you can connect people, and like what you did, you didn't even charge anything. There was no opt-in. It was just give. And you're helping other people connect together. It creates such a stronger bond for everyone. And that level of accountability, too, goes way up.
Absolutely. And I thought, you know, I kind of saw this as just a giving back to the community kind of thing. And I was going to do it anyway for myself. And I had no idea. I just almost learned by accident that it ended up being this massive hit. And then someone from the challenge contacted me and wanted to hire me through for my services. Ended up buying like a $25,000 package for me. And he said, how often do you get to see someone in action for 30 days before you decide to work with them? I know you, and I know you're going to treat my project, my brand, my business with the same level of care and love that you treated every single video that you did. And so when you have that relationship, people come to you. They don't care about price. They want to work with you, and they're pre-sold on working with you. You don't have to be like, okay, here are, you know, 5 different case studies of success and referrals and talk to this person and all this documentation. They just say, yes, I want to work with you. And it's a very different kind of sales conversation at that point.
Well, it's a totally different level that you're playing at then, and you've given so much on the front end and how you've shown them how you work. That's what I really like about what you're talking about here and the level of where things are going in the marketplace. People want to connect with brands. They don't just want to be in the outside looking anymore with all the information and videos. They really want to be able to see you in action, and you have opened the door up. You're not like Marisa behind the curtain doing all the fun stuff. You're out there and engaging with everyone. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. What every brand, whether they're brick and mortar or, you know, an expert coach online, can implement in their business. So before we wrap up here, I want to ask you what for all the big brands that you've worked with, what has been probably the biggest mistake that you have seen people do when they're starting to create their message and their brand?
I really think it's paint by numbers. You know, we're all learning from the same experts, the same mentors, and I think everybody wants that magic bullet solution, that quick tactic, that, you know, that strategy that's just going to put them over the edge. And I think that while all of those tactics and strategies and technologies help, it's really important to kind of tune in to yourself and what makes you really different, and who you naturally are, what people love about you, why they choose to work with you anyway, and to represent that in everything that you do. And I can't tell you how many people are alive and vibrant and passionate when you're talking to them about what they do. And then all of a sudden they get in front of the camera or they're writing their content and it's like this boring corporate talking head that nobody wants to work with, right?
Right.
It's like we've got this illusion of what it takes to be professional
Yeah.
or who we have to be.
Yep.
But as soon as we like unleash ourselves onto the world, people fall in love with them ourselves. And it's not like, okay, here's the professional me, or nobody's going to think I'm credible unless, I look like I'm, 50 years old and then, grew up in a monastery. It doesn't have the case. Right?
Right. Exactly.
Yourself. And people actually find that even more endearing. And then, they're still going to believe that I've got the goods.
Yes.
So ultimately,
Yes.
it's not going to discredit the fact that I've got the 8 years of working with agencies on multi-million-dollar projects, and I've got my name attached to X number of documentaries and won these number of awards and worked with these clients, which I've done.
Right.
But I don't even lead with that anymore. I don't tell people, I went to Brown University and graduated at the top of my class, and then I went to the best art school in the world. And, people don't care.
It's true. They don't care about that at all. And I think we've all been programmed like that, because I went through the same thing growing up. It's you tell this, you've done this, and it's too cookie cutter. It's too bland for what people are looking for. So this has been absolutely brilliant. So the last question that I want to ask you, and then we'll go into to learn more about Marisa and how you can connect with her, is the 5-minute makeover. I like to call it the $1 million question. If you had to start over, from scratch today with no resources, none of the connections that you have, and without knowing anyone, what would you do to rebuild your empire?
All right. Well, I think that I love this question. It's kind of fun. Yeah. If I were going to rebuild, I would rebuild the right way. Mm-hmm. I feel like, you want to take fast action. You want to get your stuff into the world. You don't want to be perfectionist. You can't really see the results of what you do until it's out there. Right. At the same time, everything that you do matters. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I see people out there who are like publicly flailing, right? They're like reinventing themselves every 3 months or every 6 months, and people don't know what to believe.
Right.
If you look at it in politics, where some politician changes their platform in the middle of a campaign and people call them a flip-flopper, or it discredits them completely. Mm-hmm. I've also seen people making transformations over Facebook, for example, in the public eye, where all of a sudden they're one thing and then they're another thing.
Yeah.
And I think if there's no through line or continuity or consistency in who you are and how you show up for your audience, people don't know. If people don't know who you are, they're not going to buy from you.
Right.
And I think that level of kind of flip-flopping in the public eye is not trustworthy. It doesn't invoke confidence that you're somebody who's grounded and you're somebody who really knows what they're doing to support that other person.
Right.
So if I were going to do this from the ground up again, I would first obviously connect with who I am, what my core values are, what I want, and then of course really identify who my audience is. Who am I talking to? What are their needs, their desires, their deepest aspirations? How can I resonate with them in a way that's aligned with who I am, so I'm not, putting on a mask, I'm not pretending to be something I'm not, because that just crumbles in the end, and you can't sustain that. And then I would also look at, okay, who else is playing in this market, right? How am I unique and different from them? What is everybody else overlooking? Mm-hmm. Everybody else could be overlooking something like a technology, some kind of point to emphasize. It could be how you train or do what you do. It could be some of the stories and some of the emotional attachments. What is everybody else overlooking?
Right.
Then how can I bring myself and my knowledge and my expertise to market in a way that's completely irresistible, that inspires people to say yes, but that's different from everybody else out there? And by different, you don't need to be radically different. It's not like you've got to be, a blue alien from, the movie Avatar. You don't have to do that, but you've got to be uniquely, authentically different. And the great thing is that a lot of times, someone was asking me the question, on a coaching call recently, and they said, I've got a marketing blog, but I also talk about cooking because I really love cooking, and I talk about, this thing as well. And I'm feeling like it's too much for people. And I talked to her and said, well, look, there's 2 ways you can go about integrating your love for your love for cooking into your business about marketing. And one of them is by using this love for cooking as your brand motif, right? Mm-hmm. So you could be the marketing chef, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You could be, the marketing saucier.
Yes, I love it.
Have a whole cooking theme to your work that makes it a lot more fun and an expression of who you are. Or you could think about incorporating that into your niche. You could do marketing for people who are in the food industry, for people who are becoming chefs, for people who are writing cookbooks, right?
Right.
So that's an example of fusing a market need with who you actually are in a way that's niching you and branding you uniquely, that's distinct, that's also going to light you up a lot more. And rather than just being like, here's my blog, I talk about marketing and food.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You're leaving it to the audience to kind of figure out what it all means.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've got to do the work of tying that all up into a neat, irresistible package that you can replicate through everything that you do.
Yes. Yes. Oh, this is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for all of this just amazing information. I can't wait for everyone to jump in here and learn about this. And I want you to share your free offer that you have for people to get connected with you and take this to the next level, because this is just fantastic.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been talking a lot about story. It's something that I'm super passionate about because what I've realized is that content is no longer king. And if you really want to build, authority and authenticity and relationship and community with your audience, then that's stepping up and telling your story, and not just the main story, but stories everywhere in your business. So what I've done is I've created a little video training and a little report called How to Use Your Story to Create Authenticity, Authority, and Income. And if you go to hiddenstorypower.com if you go to liveyourmessage.com/story, you can get that. You can sign up, receive the free video training and the free report, and really get started to identifying what those core stories are for you. And I actually give you 8 questions that you can start to ask yourself to pull out the stories that are hiding inside of you. Because so many of our stories come from kind of similar moments in time in our lives. So these questions are really designed to elicit those moments in time and pull out the stories that are going to be relevant to your business. And I also go more into depth about structuring those stories and all the different places in your business that you can use story to build those kinds of bridges and those kinds of connections that are going to differentiate you from everybody else in the market and create those emotional resonances, which is what, moves you from being a service provider or an information marketer into a figure, a guru, like the kind of person that everybody wants to follow.
Oh, I'm so excited for everyone to get in there and learn about that. It's one of the most fun, my grammar's off here, the most exciting exercises you can go through, because then you can really bring your life and passion into your business. So this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Any other words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I always say, go out there and live your message.
Love it. Well, thank you, Marisa, so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for hosting all this.
And I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'd love to get your feedback here for the Lifestylepreneur podcast right in iTunes. Simply leave us a 5-star and a review letting us know what you like, who you're interested in hearing more from, and what topics you really want help with in your business, that I can bring on those key experts to really fine tune and help you in your business and creating the lifestyle of your dreams. And I'll be giving shout outs, so make sure you put your name and your website address if you want me to share that with the community as well. And again, thanks for listening. I'm so excited that you found the Lifestylepreneur podcast, and I can't wait to connect with you and learn more about your business as we continue to grow this community. So again, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Lifestylepreneur podcast. Again, I'm Kris Gilbertson, and I'm committed to bringing you top training from leading lifestylepreneurs all over the world to help you break through and turn your dreams into your ideal lifestyle. And make sure to join us at www.lifestyleacademy.com to receive VIP training from specific guests I interview on the show, so that you can really easily start to implement what you've learned from listening. I know we're all busy, and sometimes we don't have time to listen to the entire podcast or take notes, because I'm always listening on the go. So I like to call it the Lifestyle Cliff Notes to creating your ideal business and make it really simple for you. So those will be sent via the email list. Plus, I also want to connect with you personally, and being on the Lifestyle Academy mailing list is where all the magic happens. We'll host VIP trainings once a month that we can't always bring out on the podcast with even more detailed information. And I also want to connect with you personally. I want to know what's going on in your business and what you need help with, and who I can bring on to aid you in creating your ideal lifestyle. And so I'll be asking questions every once in a while that I want you to reply, and I reply back to you personally. So again, until next time, wishing you on your way to achieving all of your dreams. Talk to you soon.